Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, friends. Welcome into the podcast. This is episode 149, and this episode, I think, is a real treat for two main reasons. Number one, because of the topic and the subject that we're going to tackle today, which is, in short, how to get a lot of projects done on time. And that's tricky no matter where you are in your journey, if it's just you as a solopreneur or particularly when you have a team, but especially when you have a lot of projects going on at the same time, it can be very, very tricky to get all those done on time efficiently. So we're going to dive into that topic. I've learned a lot about this in my journey, and my guest in this episode, which is the other aspect of why I'm excited about this for you, is somebody who's awesome. This is Massimo Zefferino, who has such a fun name to say, but is also the founder and creative director of zfactor.com, which is a branding and strategy and design company. He's also the host of the Angry Designer podcast, which is a really cool podcast for graphic designers. And he's just an awesome dude. I think you're going to see right from the get-go that Massimo is somebody who has learned a lot about scaling in the creative arts. And more importantly, he's learned a lot about getting stuff done. And I think that's really, really crucial to dive into because it's something that a lot of people tend to kind of overlook, especially when they get into business. A lot of people want to just get new clients and find new clients, but there's much less of a push to actually do a really good job for your client and just take it one project at a time. And I've actually found those lessons to be more important than anything, because what's the use of getting a bunch of new clients if you can't get their projects done on time or if it turns into a bad experience? So in this episode, you're going to hear all sorts of insight about how to get projects done on time, especially when you're managing a lot of projects, which I know is going to help you out. Again, Massimo is awesome. I think you're going to really enjoy this convo. He kind of felt like a brother from another mother for me because he was just a really cool dude to talk with and was really transparent and open about all the lessons he's learned. So I know you're going to pull so much from this episode, and you're going to be able to apply this stuff right now to your business, which I'm super excited about for you. Now, before we dive in, I cover managing a lot of projects and how to meet deadlines and get all of your projects done on time throughout the entire process with your clients in my web design business course. So if you need help with this after this episode, if you're ready to go to the next level with me and you would like me to guide you through every aspect from start to finish for your projects, I'd love to do that in my web design business course. It covers everything for you, and I'll give you a little free tip that I do talk about in this episode, I believe, a little later on, and that is to space and stagger, especially if it's just you as a solopreneur. If it's just you, you've got to be able to space and stagger your projects. A ton of different ways I can show you how to do that. And then in my web design business course, I'll guide you in depth through every step of the way that way you'll be more profitable and you'll just wake up and enjoy your day and enjoy what you do more and more, because there's nothing worse than being overwhelmed. And that can happen when you're managing a lot of projects. So join my web design business course today if you'd like me to come alongside you and help guide you in all that. And for right now, here's my conversation with Massimo. We're going to talk about how to get a lot of projects done on time, and buckle up because we have a fun ride in this one. Enjoy. Massimo, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Grazie, thank you.
So
maybe I should try to pull off an accent throughout this whole thing with that kind of intro.
Well, you just blew it, but I totally wish you would have, because that would have been amazing. We were joking because right before we went live, I called you Massimo, and that was just the redneck in me saying it completely wrong. But come to find out, you are of, I'm guessing it's an Italian descent style name.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Absolutely are. Yes. I was the first one in my family that was born here. The rest immigrated over. I want to say on a boat because it sounds sexier, but no, they flew.
Okay.
Yeah. Technology.
Well, I got you beat, man. My great grandfather did come over on the boat. From Italy, yeah, and to New York and changed the original. I'm just going to completely derail us right from the beginning.
Hey, that's good.
The original name was Ambrosio, and then he changed it to Ambrosia to sound a little more American, which brings us right into the A thing. So
right. It's all A. You can get an Italian name when it ends with a vowel, so we're good.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Listen, we have some kinship in that already, but also with what we do with helping designers. I know you help graphic designers and a lot of other folks. you have an interesting take on, quite frankly, just getting shit done and how to manage a lot of projects at the same time. That's what I'm super excited to pick your brain about in this conversation. So to kick us off, man, do you want to let everybody know, first off, where you're based out of? And if you can summarize what you do, what do you tell people?
So our agency is based out of Waterloo. So we're about an hour outside of Toronto. Waterloo is kind of like one of the big tech capitals in Canada. We've got Google here that employs like 2,000 people. We've got accelerators. We've got Square. We've got so many fantastic, tech companies here, which kind of works well for us. Our agency is we're a brand strategy and creative agency that focuses on B2B technology companies. So, we took, design, of course, and we love technology, and we put those two worlds together, and we help technology companies be more human and look more global, because this is kind of where they all seem to struggle. They all just by nature become too technical. They talk too technical. They act too technical, and they assume that everybody, who wants their product is technical. But the reality is people are scared of technology. They're intimidated by it. So we put a human spin on it. We bring design into it, and we help rebrand a lot of these companies and help take their tech into the future. So it's actually kind of cool.
So you're really putting personality into the brand and into the company's face, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we try to humanize them so much. And I hate that word. That's such an overused buzzword. But the reality is, technology companies are often, led by technology enthusiasts, right? They're often engineers or people who just love technology, and they're generally very smart. And they suffer from what we refer to as the curse of knowledge, which means they just assume everybody has that same understanding of tech and that passion for tech. But the reality is people don't really care about the technology the same. They care about what that technology does for them, right? And, the best example, of course, of this is, even though they're overused in virtually every branding and design and marketing courses, is Apple has done a great job of doing this, right? Steve Jobs, love him or hate him, early on, he didn't necessarily create innovative products. He just took things that already existed and remarketed them. He made them better. He changed the user experience. He took back then what was an MP3 player and he turned it into an iPod. He let people know that, you can carry 1,000 songs in your pocket. That means a lot more to somebody than saying, hey, we've got 4 gigabytes of storage capacity that you can put your media file. People don't know what that means,
That's
right?
a great point.
So
yeah.
That was one thing he did very well. He dumbed down technology to the point where it made that connection with people. And I think that's the biggest thing. We thrive on trying to make meaningful connections between, our customers' technology and the people, their customers that they serve. So
here we go. There's lesson number 1 for everybody. Simplify your services so that it makes sense to your customer. Make sure they understand what the heck you're talking about. And as web designers, I think, as you know, with my audience of web designers, this is really tricky because Absolutely. As we get to know the tech and the tools, you'll end up just unknowingly talk a lot about the tech side of things. And I learned early on, I don't even need to usually say WordPress or Divi or any of the tools that I'm using to clients unless I feel like they want to manage the website, because they don't need to know. All they need to know is, what's the website? How's it going to help me grow my business? That's it. So great lesson right off the bat, man. And I meant to ask you, so are you guys... So 2 questions. I want to ask about your services right now, because I think that'll really give us a good framework of how you manage a lot of projects. And then I do want to hear more about, your YouTube channel and your teaching. So your services, though, what do you guys do primarily? Do you just focus on branding and logo and identity, or are you guys doing web-related services? What does your suite of services look like?
Cool. So we do break down. So this has been refining over 20 plus years of being in business, right? Because everybody always starts off as being a generalist and offering everything to everybody. And I really did find that the value came in not only niching down and becoming a specialist, but then also having a hard realization of what you're good at, what you can return to every day and, enjoy thoroughly. So what we did is we realized that, our strength hands down, obviously has been brand strategy and creative content, right? Creating content, being creative, designing all day long. Our weaknesses were things like analytics and, like funneling campaigns and such, because this took a different kind of brain power that, we were not of. We are a bunch of creatives here. We've got a creative agency. So what we did is we brought down our offerings and broke it down into two buckets. Obviously, brand strategies is a passion of all of ours here. Coming up, seeing that vision and helping companies go in the future. And then to help achieve that vision, we're also a full creative agency. So we do creative content, right? And, broken down into digital, which is web, UX, wireframes, prototyping, and then, content creation, which is everything from graphic design to, infographics, the collateral material, but then also copywriting, right? And then, with that comes a few other offerings, like people will always ask, well, once you launch a website, will you do SEO? Well, we'll do on-page SEO, we'll do SEO content, but we don't do any outbound campaigns because, again, there are people better suited for that. Just like SEM, although that fits in the realm of websites and such, it's a completely different business. And, there was a time when you wanted to offer it all, but then, the reality kicks in if I'm crunching and cringing every time somebody's asking me to, let's go through their analytics and details and figure out, the best keywords to focus on for their pay-per-click campaign. Whoa, I just froze out. That wasn't where the passion was. So we are, if it's content development, creation, be it, videos, blogs, social media accounts, or, the vision and the strategy for those, that's what we bring in-house.
Gotcha. Yeah. Another great lesson, because when you get that psi factor and you get an opportunity where it's like, wow, I could make a lot of money doing this, but do I really want to do it? What a valuable lesson to learn early on and to be self-aware about, because sometimes there's a lot of good opportunities that you're not suited for, or you just don't like. Like I know Michelle, my SEO gal, who I've had on the show a couple times, she loves keyword research and spreadsheets and domain authority data and stuff. I hate that stuff. I like for her to do it and then figure out what we need to do and then go from there. But she loves it. So we all have our lane. So that's pretty cool. And I'm sure this idea of how to manage all these projects is extra crucial when you have a lot of services. Even just one main service, it's hard to figure out how to manage all your projects. So I can only imagine with a suite of services, how important this is.
When it gets a little tricky.
Yeah. So before we dive into that, though, I did want to ask you. So you have the Angry Designer. You also have Design for Tech. Is that something like is that a secondary type of passion project, or?
So interestingly enough, when you start developing your own brand, be it as a freelancer, be it as an agency, even as an influencer, right? You have your clients, but then you have kind of, so Design for Tech came very much as a way to promote Z-Factor, to Z-Factor clients, right? We wanted to let everybody know that, our skill set, of course, is understanding technology and how to actually market technology. And so what we would do is we came up with the YouTube channel for Design for Tech to offer technology companies, whether they're early stage, mid stage, late stage, with just tips and advice on, how to take their brand, how to approach, problems that, we would otherwise, offer up, as an offering with our company. The Angry Designer podcast, actually, that I would call our passion project. So that stemmed out. So first up, that's not necessarily to our clients per se. That's more reaching out to other designers, right? Now, granted, any sort of publicity is good publicity, right? And I mean, in all reality, even though Design for Tech, does well, people like it, that, they follow us and they cheer and they comment on it. The reality is, I'm not sure if the customers are watching every one of those videos and being like, yep, you're the man. Or if they're just like, wow, these guys have got a whole bunch of channels and a whole bunch of followers and viewers. Good enough, right?
It is authority building. It's definitely,
absolutely.
This is something I preach big time. And I just had Adam Preiser of WP Crafter, who has a massive YouTube channel, millions and millions of views for WordPress.
Insane.
He even said the same thing. He told me, even if you're a web designer and you just have some videos that are out there, even if you feel like, 33 views isn't that much, 33 people have watched that, and that's building your authority. It's showing your expertise. So
absolutely.
whether it's in your brand or whether it's something alongside you and it just, shows your expertise to clients,
it makes
it's
you
so
that
valuable.
much more credible, right?
Yeah, credible.
And I think credibility is something that everybody seeks when they come, because they're not always looking for the most creative person. They're not always looking for the most technical agency. They're looking for the safest choice, a company, a person that they can rely on and know that person will deliver, right?
Yeah.
So I think that lends to the credibility. The Angry Designer podcast, again, little spin. So during COVID, everybody's locked down, and being creatives, we all need to vent in certain ways. And we knew there was a lot of other people suffering the exact same way we did in our space. So we decided to do a podcast that would actually help designers. And what I mean by that is, generally people get into design because they're passionate about it, whether it's web design, whether it's graphic design, whether it's just even logo design. It's out of passion. And for me, passion has taken me my whole life. But the sad reality is, after the age of 40, the numbers drop down in age for design. I mean, less than a quarter of all designers, are between the ages of 40 and 50. And then after 50, it drops down to even 5%. So that's really sad. At first wondering where these people are going. These aren't people that are moving up. These are people that are leaving their career. I did some research on Reddit. I went into Quora. I went online. The reality is, it is an intense industry that we're in. And I'm sure web is exactly the same way. We easily get burnt out. We keeping up with technology is insane. We suffer from ageism, designers, I'm sure. And I know technology is the same way. Programmers, engineers suffer from ageism as well. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to help designers reach this 25, 30, 40-year milestone. And we wanted to come up with a kind of a no bull podcast, just calling out, all the parts that, we're all frustrated with, but everybody's scared to say anything about because they don't want people to go against them. And, we're at a place, we've been doing this so long that I don't care if anybody gets angry at me for saying what we're going to say, but the reality is people are jeering. I mean, they're constantly cheering. They're dropping us notes saying, thank you. This is, long needed to be said. And it's silly things from just, the industry's approach towards logos, how sometimes there's just overinflated, strategies, where execution should be, more important. Just things like that, or just even the ridiculous personalities that we all have to deal with, but then also other problems like ageism, and dealing with that head on, not feeling like how to get around ageism and not feeling like you're old when you're, amongst a teen of, 20 somethings and such. So we actually,
well, you're giving me a topic idea for the podcast on ageism and how to approach that. Cause I do have a lot of folks who are over 50 who are building web design businesses. And I found a lot of folks are actually gearing up for retirement and they want to do something on the side. And I love that. I think it's amazing. One of my newest students is 71. That's great.
Awesome.
Like that's so cool. So,
and the cool thing is neuroplasticity lasts well into your 70s. And that's basically just the ability to keep learning, your brain to just keep absorbing and learning. I mean, well into your 70s, and could be even later if you actually keep up with it. So absolutely, there really is no age limit to, when you do something, especially out of passion, because people genuinely, they kind of get interested. It's just, there's a lot of, biases, or people just make a lot of assumptions. Oh, they're old, they're crotchety, they're outdated, they're not going to keep up with it. That's what ageism is, right?
Yeah. Well, you talked about some other problems, and one problem in any arena when it comes to creative work is the projects, managing these projects. So let's dive into it. A little late to getting right into it, but hey, that's how we roll on this podcast. This has been some good points already leading up to this, though. And I think already we can tell that you have a passion for sharing and giving back on what you have learned in your experience, a couple decades in the industry, it sounds like. I guess the first question I have for you as far as managing a lot of projects is, I kind of want to hear your take on this. If you are slammed with projects, is that a good problem to have? Would you consider it a challenge? What are your thoughts when there is a designer, in my case, web designers, who have a lot of different projects and are pumped about that because they're slammed? And while I agree it's kind of a good problem to have, it is nonetheless a problem and a challenge. What are your thoughts on that?
It is a problem. So, I used to struggle with this and try to figure out the best way to go about this. And, I remember once talking to my father, and he mentioned to me, I told him, I said, you know what, this has been the dream project I ever had. I've always wanted, and it's in my lap right now, but I've got 5 other projects I still have to get done. I'm feeling overwhelmed. What should I do? How should I do this? And my father's like, well, let me ask you honestly, is this a dream project that you can do and you have the skill set for, or do you have to learn something? I said, no, this is absolutely, this I can do. And he said, the other projects? I said, absolutely, I can do them. So he says, the only thing that you're facing is time, unfortunately. And I was like, absolutely. He says, well, if time is the only thing that's stopping you from getting all these projects done, then just work more hours for now. So initially it was a matter of, it's not that I couldn't do them. It's just I was running out of time to do it. So the first thing I did is I started realizing that I could work a little more to get these extra additional projects done. But then after working and burning yourself out and working 12-hour days and 12 hours back to back to back, regardless how old I was or how young I was, I started realizing there had to be a better way to do this. And this is when I started managing my time better. I started realizing, what it actually took to get certain projects done. And I would stop trying to overwork every single project and only overwork the key projects that were going to make a lot of difference. And what I mean by that is, we give every customer 100%, but you can't deny the fact that certain projects are just more enticing to work on. So certain projects are a little more cool, a little more fun, right? And the reality is, this is still a business. So we have to pick and choose, which strides are going to take our career further, are going to take our abilities further. So that's where we started realizing, which projects, needed to get done now versus which projects, could take us further in the future. Right. And then it became a matter of putting the right amount of effort into every project.
Yeah. Interesting take on that. And I haven't really had anyone on the show so far who's talked about, I guess, in short, giving a little more oomph to certain projects that may be worth more or maybe more valuable in the long run. I certainly did that unintentionally. There were projects where, whether it was the budget they had or whether they were a really good referral type client, I just gave a little more oomph to the project. I would work a little harder, maybe add a little more time, maybe go the extra. I mean, I typically always tried to go the extra mile, but if it was a $1,500 mom and pop quick type of site versus a $5,000 business that was established and had a lot of great leads, I'm going to give them a little more, not passion, but just, again, go the extra mile on that. And
absolutely,
I totally did that unintentionally, but it's true. You do have to kind of look at your projects and figure out, okay, ideally you don't want to spend too much time over the budget, but I guess sometimes it's worth it, right? If it's going to be something that's going to be more fruitful in the long run.
Well, it is to be fruitful, but the key takeaway here is, of course, definitely take those projects and absorb on them. But, what that whole exercise made us realize is that, when we started putting, we had all the same amount of passion for the $1,500 projects to the 5,000, as you did. Absolutely. But the reality is that little extra oomph was for us, not for the customer. And what I mean by that is that customer will not know the difference between, you giving, your 80% to get that project done versus you spending extra time trying to crank things out for yourself afterwards, right? Customers are paying you to get something done. They're paying you for a service that they can't do. And as long as you deliver that service in the quality that you promised, customer is going to be happy. They won't see that extra oomph the way you will. And that was, I think, the big aha moment, right? And this really sucks to say, but it's like good enough actually is good enough. So we just did this podcast 2 weeks ago on perfection. And how perfection absolutely doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in programming. This we know. Web design, I mean, you've always got, vulnerabilities and flaws and wrong screen sizes, devices, designed. It's just, you can keep going and going and going. But the reality is, trying to strive for perfection, it's unattainable. The reality is, you're 80%, we're professionals. You're an expert in your field. I'm an expert in my field. All of your listeners are experts at what they do, which is why their customers have come to them to deliver. Right. So the reality is, if you can deliver what the customer needs, that, if you can meet their expectations, they're happy. and they will keep coming back and back and back. That's the difference. A lot of times what happens is people try to give that over effort every single time. They try to give that extra oomph. And then what happens is it hurts them, right? They miss deadlines. They can't deliver. They go back to the client and say, I really wanted to create this amazing thing for you, but I only got it to this level. Well, all of a sudden you're apologizing for giving the customer something that's half-assed, even though in your mind, you're trying to overdo it. Deliver what they want, at the quality they want, because your 75, 80% is already their 100%.
Yeah,
and that's what they
a great
need.
Point. That's a great point. Yeah, it really is. I always tried to get it to about 90%, but that's probably well beyond what most customers need. I agree.
Right.
It is interesting. I was just thinking about sometimes when I was slammed with projects, and a big factor of the reason I didn't have those out the door was my own fault in tinkering too much or going too far down a little rabbit hole with something. Again, if it's on like one project that's really big or a really great client, I think that's fine. But if you're doing that with 5 little tiny websites that you don't need to do that, then don't do it. What a great lesson. And you're right. Most clients don't even know, or they don't even care. Like I had clients where I went really ham on like this CSS trick or this custom graphic that I created. And there was nothing more deflating than me finally getting out the door. And then they're like, oh, cool. So anyway, I want to work on this. I'm like, seriously? Like I just killed myself for that reaction. That's not what I wanted. Or God forbid they want to change it completely, which is super, frustrating, which all problems we all have as web designers and creatives. But nonetheless, a great point, particularly when it comes to a lot of projects, because I do feel like, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this here. When you have a lot of projects, is it fair to say you have just got to do what you need to do just to get them done or out the door? Is that kind of the mindset?
Well, yes, absolutely. Again, do what needs to get done, of course, right? Which is hitting that 75, 80%, right? But what you don't want to do is, there is ways to prolong things. If you know that there's a project sitting and you need feedback on the customer, instead of trying to figure it out yourself, get that feedback earlier. And that buys you a little bit more time on that project while you're working on another. One thing that I find that people are so scared to do, whether it's my awesome team or whether it's freelancers or either other agency owners, people have got this pride. And they're scared to go ask the customer for clarification, for something, did I misunderstand, whatever. We're not expected to have all the answers. In fact, if we open up that channel of communication with our customer and ask them good questions, what it does is it brings them along for that journey. And that gets them more engaged to the project, more engaged with their personalities and the working relationship. And in fact, it actually increases this long-term relationship that we all try to strive for our customers, right? We have some customers, believe it or not, that have been with us from the beginning, like 23 plus years. We've got a handful. And again, it's very much a collaborative effort. I personally am not of the mindset that I'm supposed to have every answer for them. Many times I tell the customer the same thing. I don't know for sure, but give me a couple of days and I will 100% find out for you.
I preach the same thing, man. That's beautiful.
Right.
Yep.
Right? Hallelujah on this one. And they appreciate that because you're being honest, and they know that our skill set, our knowledge, will help us get to that answer 100 times faster than it would for them. Right. And again, and it's not, and in no way does it kind of makes you or deflate you as being any less the expert than you were prior to that. In fact, it's more, because then all of a sudden they're realizing you're also human. So it really opens up that. So I find that that's another way to kind of help out the process along. If you've got a big, reality is we have to get all these done, of course. But if of all these projects, there's some questions that, we need to do here, we can pull those out and get those quick small tasks over. And then it kind of puts that project in a pending state, waiting for the customer to feedback, which allows you then to focus on other parts. Right. I mean, again, I get charged up when I'm working on 4, 5, 6 different projects at the same time, but I can't work on them equally. So it's just a matter of managing, getting this one a step forward, getting this one a step forward.
That kind of brings me to time blocking. And so I read a book called Deep Work, which is something I recommend to a lot of my students, which really helped change my mind from basically a customer support person to a service provider. I was notorious for leaving my phone on, my email up, and the typical, notifications, all that stuff. once I realized that in order to be more profitable, in order to work less, make more, and also save my sanity, I had to protect my creative time. And I had to have these priorities of tasks that I was going to get done either weekly or daily. And whatever happens, I'm going to get these done. Time blocking was it for me, meaning phones off, emails off, notifications off. I'm going to get this done. What are your thoughts on time blocking? Do you have any tips, tricks, things that you've learned with how to just do you do certain segments of the day? Do you take a day a week to get what does that look like for you as far as time blocking?
So a little bit of both. So first off, self-awareness is massive in this. And what I mean by this is make sure you realize what your strengths are, but even more importantly, the way I approach this is what time of day are you most productive? So for me,
great point.
Right. For me, I am early. I get up every day at 6, love it or hate it. Some days I wish I could stay later. I can't, I don't know, but, I check my emails quickly, first thing I do. And then I block off 4 hours, 5 hours in the morning to just get the tasked items that I figured out first thing, right? Sometimes I plan them the night before, which helps. But at the same time, sometimes you're greeted with some surprises in the morning that I just want to have other people take care of first thing. So I know I'm most efficient in the mornings. So then I will work for a solid 4 or 5 hours in the morning, which I will probably do a day and a half worth of work in that time. Right. And then up until lunch, that's when I crank it all out. And then I check back on my emails. And then it's a little bit more of a service afternoon where I'm just doing everything I'm supposed to take care of. But when it comes to the stuff that I'm responsible for, because I'm strongest in the morning. I used to also do, once every 2 weeks as well to just focus on business administrative stuff. As a business owner, I find that hard to give away. The reality is we have some account managers, there's often communication. I need some hours from them or some receipts or jobs. So, I try to give myself once every 2 weeks for that as well. But you're absolutely right about the creativity. I mean, again, you have to protect that. Yeah. Right. But it's fun. Even on the weekends, I like to recharge your creativity by watching. I just watched this amazing documentary this past weekend on Banksy and urban art. And it was just amazing on, just the rise of graffiti and graffiti artists and how it's taken from the streets to now, basically to art galleries. It just charged me up. I wanted to go get a spray can and start vandalizing everything. And then I kind of got to my senses and realized that wasn't smart. But I mean, again, it was just a great way to recharge and just kind of look forward to that next morning. So, yeah.
Yeah. I had a similar, kind of daily and weekly routine or block to where I tried not going into my email first thing, but I just realized I like getting going and looking at the email just to see what do I need. Is there any emergencies I need to hit real quick?
Exactly.
Or whatever? I did tend to go that route, but the trick was, as a web designer, when emergencies do arise, or even if they're not emergencies, they're just things that need to be taken care of pretty quickly. I always had what I call my reactionary work block, which was in the afternoon, which was at least an hour or so. That way, if a client emails me at 6 a.m. and says there's a widget down on the sidebar, I know that can wait till later today, and I've got my block later that I'll hit that. Emails off, phones off. I'm not a customer support person. I'm getting this work done on this website. Email through lunch. And then I kind of followed the same thing. I would tend to have typically a bit of a not completely reactionary, but a little more of an in and out type of approach in the afternoons because particularly when it came to scaling a team. And as you know, not only when you start scaling are you talking with clients, but you're talking with your team members. So you kind of do have to block out certain time for certain tasks, right? And different lines of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's, I don't know if it's secrets or tricks on how to get a large volume of tasks done. Our brand has, evolved the past few years. And, just like any brand, you can think you stand for this, you can think your brand is this, but the reality is it's kind of what everybody else's experience are with your company. And, it came to the point where people realized that we were that get shit done kind of company. They knew that if they would come to us, gave us a task, we would get that task done. And that was a really big difference between us and I guess a lot of our competitors at the time, because, a lot of companies pride themselves on analysis paralysis. They will sit there and analyze every single ask, every single job to the point where, we had a company proudly tell us When we went in, they needed us to help them get their website over the finish line. And we said, well, have you gotten down your information architecture? Are you wireframing yet? Do you have, user journeys in place? And they're proudly, oh, we've been working on user journeys for 8 months. We think we have it now.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, who are you helping in this case?
Look, in creatives, both in web design, I don't think is as bad as graphic design, I'll be honest. And I feel like I can say that because I was a graphic designer. I came from that world.
Enough.
Graphic designers are notoriously terrible with deadlines or overanalyzing, overthinking, doing stuff that doesn't even need to be done near their project, taking way too long. And again, it does bleed into web designers as well because of this creativity factor. And look, I'm empathetic towards that because creativity is not something that can be easily manufactured or done like a different task might be. I think you do. It is kind of a muscle I found that you can train and you have your own different ways to go about it. But at the end of the day, it is kind of tricky. Sometimes you just like I built sites that just came together like that. And then I'd have sites where I'm just like, man, I got nothing on this. I guess I was going to ask this later. Let's talk about that right now. You got a lot of projects, but you're just stuck. What are some things that you found in your experience, Massimo, that you have used to help get out of that rut of just feeling maybe creatively stuck?
So burnout's a real thing. And you want to make sure that you understand what kind of burnout it is that, what you're in. And if it's just something small and temporary, just because you need creative idea, or if it's a bigger problem. So if it's something small, where it's just, I'm stuck on a specific project problem, I have the benefit where I do have a team now, right? I've got a team of amazing creatives, that work with me, beside me, not under me. And I can always get outside support always. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? So first off, I go to them. If the team isn't around or if the problem is even over their head, again, I'm never scared to bring that insight, that question, that little bit of confusion I have to the customer. Right. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised, again, what you hear back from them, because often it's a problem that they've gotten in their industry. Sometimes it's just their reaction to something. Right. So again, that's a big thing that, we obviously bring forth quite a bit is, we bring things forward, and sometimes we bring things forward at an earlier state to gauge reaction. Right. So sometimes you don't need the project to be done, and it is okay to show an intern thing and then see what the reaction is and focus on that reaction. Right. And it's that initial reaction you want to focus on. You don't want to have them look at it, analyze it. You want to see what that reaction is within 3 to 5 seconds to whether it's, a piece of art, an idea, a tagline that you want to run by them, because that initial reaction is what 90% of the people who are going to view your work, that's all they're going to give you. Right. They're going to look at your logo. They're going to be cool. Okay. And then they're going to move on. They're going to look at that website, right? Or they'll be like, I don't get it, but they'll move on, right? Nobody will give you the satisfaction, of analyzing how you think that they're going to do. Same with the website, right? They'll land on their page. They're going to love it and get it, or they're going to, oh, I don't like it. And they're going to bounce, right? But again, if we focus in on that reaction, I think it's also telling of, the bigger picture.
That's good. Great idea of talking with the client in some way. Obviously, you may not want to say like, I'm completely stuck on your project. I don't know what to do, but I'm sure, there's a tactful way to maybe just ask some questions. There's a better way of doing it. And there were times where I was just like, I know we had our strategy call, but I did the same thing. I would reach out and say, I'm just thinking through like this section, and I just want to clarify this, or wanted to get some feedback on this. And then it would like spark the idea. And obviously, having a team is really good in this regard because you can get some trusted feedback. The other thing is for folks who don't have a team and are a solopreneur, this is why we have online communities and Facebook groups. And this is one reason I started I have a private web design club, and everyone in there, we're like the safe space to go and just ask. And one of our most popular threads is getting feedback on your work, because that's what it's there for. Like if you're stuck, you get feedback. And I know every week in there I do a Q&A, which is usually like a website review. And one of my favorite things about doing this every week is when I review a website, it's so valuable to have another set of eyes on something. And then I'll have ideas, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. And I do the same thing. So just a little while ago, I posted something I was working on, and I got feedback from my tribe, my club, because I trust them. And even if they're brand new into design, they may see something that I don't. And that's actually sometimes extremely valuable because, I'm sure, Massimo, as designers, we get so far into our own heads and our own business. You can completely lose sight of a project, which is detrimental when you're managing a lot of projects. So all to say, this is a great point to just get some other eyes on something to help get out of that rut. I love that.
People don't value, outside perspective enough. Right. And I mean, that's what makes external agencies more powerful than internal, creative departments. That's what helps situations like this when, you're a solopreneur and just working on your craft versus getting an outside perspective, because it's that fresh perspective when you're looking at something the same way, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem seems to look like a nail, and that's not necessarily a bad thing per se, because it makes you a very good hammer, but a hammer won't fix every problem. Right. And there's always another way to look at things. And that's the value of outside perspective. I think great for your group is an amazing for those who have that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, everyone can join it. joshhall.co/webdesign-club. If you're just listening to this, or send me a note. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anyone's curious. You said in the beginning, something that separated you guys was just that get shit done kind of factor. What are some of the keys to that? Is it deadlines? Is it realistic goals and deadlines? Is it what's behind that, man? If you could, I'm sure, if we could go in a lot on that, but what are some of the core ingredients of that success?
So, it is a model that we, that we live by. It's a tenet here at the agency that, whether it was intentional or not, this has kind of become part of our brand, and people will come to us for get shit done. And it is very much of the idea that, a customer more than anything else values a job in hand versus an idea that never materializes. Right. So depending on what the task is, the reality is, customers need to get something in their hands. So if it's projects like, social media posts, that's fine. Again, going back to our idea of, hitting things at 80%. Right. We know what the customer needs, because something like social media images, a campaign or such, it's a short-term item, right? It's a short-term campaign. It's going to be here today. It's going to be, gone in a week because there's going to be 3 more posts after. Right. So we make sure we put in the right amount of effort for the right job. So again, something like a social post, make it look kick-ass, right? But we have a process that we follow, and it makes life easy. So it's not always back at the drawing board, right? In this case. Now, when the customer has something a little larger, something that's going to have a little bit more longevity, whether it's, collateral for a trade show, because they're coming back, or, something that is going to have a little bit of interaction. Then what we do is we make sure we do our time blocking as a group. Right. And we make sure we identify what those deliverables are and what the realistic expectation is for them. It's in a designer's nature to sit and just work away on something and keep tweaking. But again, that idea that perfection doesn't exist is something that we all need to learn. And we need to focus on delivering, not perfection, because the reality is, go ahead. I
was just going to say, as far as like delivering something in a certain amount of time, whether that's a full project or whether that's one little piece of the project. In one of the videos you guys have on your YouTube channel, I forget what the principle of the law is called, where if you give yourself like 3 weeks to do something,
Parkinson's law. Yep.
It'll
take you 3 weeks. And that's a phenomenon. It's absolutely true. And that's why this is where self-awareness kicks in, right? You realize that, how much time it never ceases to amaze me that often the best work comes out of the shortest timelines, right? There's, an amazing story about Waterfall, right? The house, let's just pass that one. Let's not even go there. But needless to say, that's going to take me down a rabbit hole for another hour and talk about architecture.
Gotcha.
We don't need to do that. But the reality is, it's when you have a short timeline, right? You know what you're capable of, and you know that customer needs something in 4 hours, not in 4 days. You're going to deliver the maximum amount of value in the shortest amount of time. And that's the way you need to think about everything, because this is still a business for everybody, right? Yeah. Customer is happy at that time. You're able to crank out everything because now all of a sudden this timeline of 4 days has turned into 4 hours, not because of your fault. And so the reality is you will bring up your efforts, your skills, your ability, and actually focus on just the critical items, the critical elements. And I think that's key. That analysis paralysis kills timelines. So just don't even go there. Go with your instinct, because your instinct is trained instinct in this scenario, in these environments. And again, that's where you have to stop the analysis paralysis, hand over the project, and then bring on the next one. And another thing, unfortunately, is the software that's available out there right now. I must say, project management software is, on a whole, it's pretty inflated. It's pretty bloated. It's very slow, and it's intimidating. And I have found more times than not that people put down their project management software and they will just pick up a pen and they will just start making lists, checklists of everything. So if anything, see?
Got mine right here. Still on paper, baby, as far as my main goals. And I was a big Basecamp fan. I used that for my agency, and that was great for communication. But I agree, sometimes you can almost like overdo it with processes, and that can almost be, you can find yourself like diving too far instead of just getting something done.
So if we have, two very different, roads when we take care of project management internally, right? For our get shit done projects, we've actually developed our own project management tool, which is largely a very trimmed back, but, amplified version of Excel. It's basically lists. Okay. We assign who's on it. There's just some comments within the lists, but, we refer to that as a project tracker, because again, if a job is only 4-6 hours worth of work, you don't need to enter it into a complete project. Right. But of course, our web design projects, when we're looking at 100, 150, 200 hours, completely different process, right? However, we would never try to crank out a web project in 4 hours, but we wouldn't also let it go only past 3-4 months.
And that's where I'm like realistic deadlines come into play,
absolutely.
Right? And I know this is tricky for folks just starting out, because you might wonder, well, I don't know how long this is going to take. And that's okay. You're going to figure things out. I learned to tell clients we have an average window of websites that was about 45 days. We'd have on the shorter end for a typical 5-10 page website build would be more like 30. If it's going to be a more advanced site, it might be 45 to 60. God forbid 90, or if it's a huge e-commerce site with a lot of functions or something. But that always helped because it gave us a realistic timeline, and I could kind of, what I like to call, space and stagger this project with other projects, and then give a little bit of details here and then work on another one, and all those methods that you've kind of glanced over so far. I do think one thing this is kind of all pointing to when it comes to having a deadline of an amount of hours, or a certain day next week or whatever, is that helps figure out what the priority is, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you've got 4 hours to do something, you're only going to work on what is most important. And I think that's extremely valuable. I like force myself to do that now, because as a course creator and a podcaster and YouTuber, I could spend all day just tinkering around with all sorts of different stuff. I have to be extremely self-motivated and disciplined to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it. Even though I hate giving myself deadlines, I have to give myself deadlines. Otherwise, it's going to take forever and it's not going to get done. So at least for me, that helped with figuring out the priority. Any other tips, or is that maybe the best tip?
No, there is. And I think the other tip that we swear by, and I think you might agree with this one, is we feel it's much more beneficial to get something in the client's hands sooner and iterate than trying to hold back, wait, and analyze, rethink, rejig. And that has been a big key part, a big success for us has been, when we have a high volume of projects, we're getting small steps to the customer to make sure that they're guiding us in the right direction, right? We're getting them social media concepts, very rough concepts first. They're like, I love it, I hate it. Good. Now we've just taken 3 and just trimmed it down to 2 awesome concepts, and we're off, right?
And it's kind of tricky as a creative, because you don't want to show something that's really not even close to done. But in the website realm, what I did and what I learned was extremely valuable is mainly just the homepage, even if it's just most of the homepage, because the mistake I made early on was building the entire site and then getting feedback. Like, heads up, everybody, if you really want to destroy yourself and just, not be profitable and lose your sanity, build the whole website, then get feedback. No, front page first. Maybe a service page or something if it's needed, but more often than not, generally the front page elements, header, main content elements, that kind of stuff, style guide kind of stuff, that's the key, because then you get feedback on that. Then that buys you a couple more weeks to work on the about page.
And it sets the stage, right? You've taken that first little initial step, you've gotten their approval, their blessing. And now it's like, you're right, it buys you more time and you're working on stuff that's actually, valuable. It's going to matter. It's on target, as opposed to, and this is why I keep saying communication is massive. People can't be scared to go back to their customer, and get those little checkpoints, get those little bits of approval, because it just makes for the project to travel in the same direction, more accurately. So you're constantly making all these little adjustments and getting it in their hands sooner. This way, they know that they're getting their thing on time, and they can rely on you because you're showing them, that you're actually providing. They're seeing the progress, and that's all customers want.
It's really all bringing them into the journey with you, right? Like,
absolutely.
At a certain, you don't want to pull the entire curtain back, but at least bring them along the ride so they know what's going on, where you're at. And listen, I'm sure you would agree in saying just a casual update weekly or whatever it is, even if you're not working on it yet, is key for clients, because the problem, one of the biggest problems that I had with a lot of different projects was I knew, okay, this is a priority. This one over here can wait maybe even a few weeks, but I don't want to not talk to my client for 3 weeks. Yep. So what I learned to do was just a non-notification update, just saying, hey, we're working on it. This is on slate for, a couple weeks out. We're doing this right now, and then I'll give you an update on the next update. That ended up being crucial to me. Did you find that as well when you just couldn't work on a project?
Absolutely. So one of the key features of our little, we said of the PM software that we use internally that we created is it does exactly that. We make sure that we just do updates on there, weekly updates automatically, if not, every other day. So customers see the status of their project. Right. And it kind of brings down their whole tension factor because, let's face it, they're looking, they're trusting us to deliver. And if it's quiet, if it's just quiet and there's crickets and they can't hear anything, then their anxiety goes through the roof, because they've got their own stuff to deal with. They're relying on us to deliver. And heaven forbid, if you build that whole website, like you just described, you deliver it and they're like, wow, this looks like our competitor from 2 years ago. You're just delivering an outdated website. Maybe it's not intentional. Maybe you think it's cool. Maybe it's a new style of some new style that gained inspiration from somewhere else. You brought it to a point where it's now to make an adjustment, make a change on it. It's going to be a huge feat where, like you recommended, if you showed them the homepage initially, be like, hey, we were going down this road, or you showed them the two concepts, then they would adjust for you. They would give recommendations and they're part of that process. So absolutely.
And there is so much value in a quick email back when somebody asks you for something that says on it.
Yes.
Like, there are so many times I even work with folks now where, like, if I send a revision out for something and I just don't hear back, I'm like, hopefully they got that.
Hopefully they got it.
Yeah. Like, am I going to need to remember this in 3 days? Like, just give me a got it on it. Yeah. It takes 2 seconds.
One of our tenets, one of our last most important tenets that I make everybody abide to it here, is closing the loop.
And what tenet is that? What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Things that we live and breathe here. Our tenets, our mottos,
gotcha.
our. And it's close the loop, and it's always close the loop, right? Whether it's letting the customer know you understood, you got that feedback instead of it going into Cyberland. But it's also, it goes even further. You send a delivery out via FedEx, right? Just because it's left your building doesn't mean your job's done. Your job's not done until you track that bad boy arriving to their front door. That's closing the loop. That's making sure that you can let the customer know, hey, I tracked that package. It's en route to get to your place, within 4 hours. Let me know when it gets there, right? This is making sure that you can actually wipe your hands with and be done with it, right?
Look, UPS, FedEx, Amazon, all these companies are really good to look at from this communication perspective, because you're notified when you ordered something. You're notified when it's on its way, and you're notified when they drop it off. There it is. There's the game plan for everybody. Do the exact same thing. Don't keep customers wondering what's going on. That's close the loop. I love that. That's a great core thing to abide by. I do want to ask you, I'm curious, because I got to a point in February 2018. I had started scaling my business a little bit, and I never had a full-blown agency. I was just a solopreneur that had a small team of remote contractors. But I did get to a point where I remember I had 23 projects, just me. And I was like, I literally cannot do this. Even if I work 90 hours a week, I can't do this. And that's what really forced me to scale pretty quickly. When somebody gets to that point, what do you advise, especially if they are a solopreneur? If they get to the point where they are completely overwhelmed to where spacing and staggering and realistic deadlines and everything we've talked about, isn't, at the end of the day, it's just not possible. What do you advise somebody in that situation?
So, sadly, as long as they aren't the cause of that list of 23, because, they decided to hang out for coffee longer than they should have one day, or they took a couple of days off here, that as long as they're not the reason for that, it's a good problem to have. However, the easy way out of it, sad reality, in my opinion, and what's helped us, if you're not willing to scale your company, then you need to scale your rates. And you have to bring down that list of 23 projects down to, 18, 15, 12, and then you can start charging a little more, which will bring down your inevitably, it will bring down that list of projects. But at the same time, there's a reason for it. The reward is that now you're actually, there's a reason why you have 23 projects on your plate. Either it's you are a hot commodity and people want you, to deliver, in which that case you can scale up, find another freelancer, find a partner and get stuff out in the short term. But the long term, your profits are just going out the window. So, what we did early on, of course, is we did up our rates considerably. We realized what we were getting, what we were stronger at. And we started downsizing the type of work that we were doing, but charging more for it. And then we kind of solved that problem in that sense. Now, right now, we're a very different type of company because we seem to either have, larger branding projects or we're high volume creative. And the high volume creative, right? So, having 23 projects, that's a good problem to have. I wish we only had 23 projects at a time. Yeah. Like it's an insane the kind of stuff that we're cranking out here on a weekly basis. Yeah. And the quality is all awesome. Right. So, different business model in that side. Right. There's no way that we could.
You're so far down the line too. I know you've learned a lot about how to manage all of this without
how to make it efficient. Absolutely. Yeah, for an entrepreneur, though, for a solopreneur, in all fairness, I think, key is if you're not willing to, grow your team like you did, find extra, help out there, and share those profits, be prepared to share those profits, which hurts. It can hurt. On the flip side, get that initial list done and then start raising your rates and realizing, don't forget, the one key thing is as you get better at what you do, it's going to take you less and less time to get it done. Right. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that your rates now should go down more and more as you're getting better at your skill. If something when you started was 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, you're speaking my language here. Yes, dude, that's such an important point.
You shouldn't be punished for getting better at what you do. The reality is there's a value to the customer. And if the value to the customer, they come to you with a web problem, we need to get a form up on our website and this is the value, and they value it at $500. Well, don't feel guilty that it only takes you an hour to add that form to the page and make it work, right? Because when you started this project, it might have taken you 5, 6, 7 hours. You've now figured out how to problem solve. You figured out how to do it efficiently. You figured out, which, maybe plugins to use or which code you might be able to reuse. You've just become more efficient. This is still a business. The value is still to them. They're not going to be any less happier if you return to them and say, hey, I did it for half the price. That doesn't help them out.
And look, I struggle with that big time because as I did get quicker, if something did take me only 15 minutes, when I got out of charging hourly and it was fixed, I did almost feel bad. I was like, well, I made like 300. I had some projects I made $300 an hour on, which is amazing. Of course, I had the ones where I made 15 cents, but it did kind of balance out. And as I got further along, you do realize, just want to back you up on that point because it's so important. Just because it does take you 15 minutes. It's the, 15 years of expertise that's behind that.
Here.
I know
Absolutely.
this is a popular like meme you'll see on any, social
Yep.
media for designers where it's like, why are you going to charge this if it only took you 15 minutes? It's the years of experience that I've worked my ass off on that have helped me only make it 15 minutes. So that's where the value is. And I wanted to say something real quick too, in regards to getting out of the rut of projects. Cause I agree. I think raising your rates is a biggie, scaling. The other thing I did, and I think you mentioned this, was I just scaled back my offerings at that point. When I had 23 projects, a lot of those were still graphic design and print design. And I had already started scaling those back. And that was the event that told me, okay, I have got to focus on, because I think at that point I had maybe 8 or 9 actual website projects. The rest of them were graphic design and stuff. And then I realized most of my money is in my website projects. That's what I need to focus on. So I guess I kind of implemented all 3 of those. So that would be my encouragement. Either do 1 out of the 3 or maybe all 3 if you can.
So now website projects though, okay, so putting this back on you, they're bigger projects than a print manual, a logo, something
brochure
small.
Or something. Mm-hmm.
How did you manage, 3, 4, 5 bigger projects at the same time?
For me personally, and I have a business course where I basically pull the whole curtain back on this because it is difficult. It's tricky, but it was really kind of encapsulating everything we've talked about so far, Massimo, which was realistic deadlines, spacing, and I call it again, spacing and staggering, like getting a lot done in the initial window. I found the first 2 to 3 weeks for a project crucial, particularly once we got the content. Once we got all the content we needed, it was all hands on deck, even if it was just me getting that first page design and that initial design done. And as long as I got that out, got the client all fired up, that would buy me a couple weeks. Then I had a couple weeks. They could get the rest of the content to me. Then I moved on to another project. Same deal. Got that up or finished, wrapped up a project that was going on. And then once I started scaling, it was a lot easier to manage those actual projects and then doing more sales and marketing and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd say in short, it was for me definitely realistic deadlines. Really good communication and the time blocking. Again, that was key.
Yeah, that's key.
I killed myself early on because I was taking calls at all time, and I kind of trained my clients that, Josh will answer your call when you call. And then as I became a little more, honestly, quite frankly, harder to get a hold of, suddenly that's when I was getting more projects done. So. Of course. It's kind of like it took me like 7 or 8 years to get to that point, but man, once I got to it, it was awesome. And I was still, as a solopreneur, like I still worked a really balanced life, hitting 6 figures in my web design business, just delegating a little bit and just focusing on those bigger projects and spacing and staggering. I would typically always have between 3 and 4 to 7 or 8 website projects at a time, depending. And I did have some white label work to where they would send me like 3 projects at a time. Those were a little more like template style sites that I could bust out pretty quickly. So it was more like maybe 2 to 3 big projects at a time and then a handful of smaller ones. Yeah.
You said something key there that brought up a really important point for us is another thing that we employ to get shit done is we don't start a project until the customer has delivered all the elements needed. The copy, right? Make sure if there's other logos, if there's images, don't be waiting. I mean, I laugh when people are like, oh, can you start the brochure? We don't have the copy to give you for that brochure yet, but can you just start with the layout? How can you create a layout without knowing how much copy is supposed to be in there? What key points you want to pull out? What you want to throw in the cover? It just blows me away. So we have a strict rule that we make sure that when a designer sits down and starts a project, they have all the items they can to take it as far as they can, as far as they need to. They don't take it to a 50%, and then we wait for the customer to provide us more details, then another 10% and 10%. Like you need to be able to get your hands on everything, to create something that, it's effective.
Yeah. And then I've talked quite a bit about content collection on the podcast. One of the best things I think you can do for clients who don't know what to give you is just give them some resources or some examples or just give them some constraints. Like, give me 10 images, give me, some about page information that is this long or looks like this. Give me some front page information, like give me 3 paragraphs on this or whatever it is, and extrapolate that. Or here's a little hidden trick for everybody when it comes to getting content: record a strategy call and then use the transcription. Because I actually had a web designer do that recently. She was on a call with a client and asked to record it. And then the client later on said they didn't know what to write. And they were like, the call is, you already gave me a bunch of stuff on here. We can just take the transcription. So all sorts of methods when it comes to
that's smart.
It, I mean, it doesn't work every time. And obviously you don't want to like read a book and try to pull information out, but there may be some points there where it's like, oh, they said something that's really good here. Let's use that, because there's nothing worse than having a really good meeting with a client or a strategy session, and then later on being like, crap, what did they say about this? And then they write content, and then again, going back to the human element, it's like a robot typed it out. So all really important when it comes to project management, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that if there's one reason why projects, any reason why websites don't launch, it's because the customers underestimate how hard it is to create copy for the site.
Yeah, it's a biggie.
Everybody always thinks, oh, it's easy. I could write paragraphs about my company. They start doing that, and it's always more of a challenge.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's that, and then of course it's like, yeah, you could write some paragraphs, but what's that going to do to your bounce rate? It's
right.
And this is something where, as I developed as a web designer, I learned kind of later on the absolute importance of really good copy, particularly on the main pages, the front page. Like if you really want to go into the weeds on something, cool, make it a blog post, but don't do that on your homepage. So yeah, it's a great point. It really is a separate service that should be accounted for or partnered up with somebody or built out separately as a line item, because it's definitely something separate. But again, it all goes back to, project management and getting all this done. So man, Massimo, this has been great. I feel like we've covered really a lot of good stuff as far as spacing and staggering, deadlines, realistic. I think being self-aware is a biggie. I really like that point that you talked about with like, when do you feel productive? How do you want to schedule your day? Really taking time to work on the business, but working in. We talked about client communication and the importance of that, which is absolutely key. Keeping clients, alongside you in the journey without letting them go too far inside the kitchen. But, it's an open kitchen concept, I guess, if we can put an analogy to this, right? They can see a little bit, but they don't need to see the storage. If you
do your job right, they may not want to come into the kitchen, but having a look inside is always cool, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so man, this has been great, man. I've really enjoyed this talk. I know you guys, you've had a lot of experience with, even though the projects aren't exactly the same, anything creative is difficult when you're balancing creativity, budget, timeline, different personalities. So it all kind of works in there together. I have one final question for you as we wrap this up, but I do want to know, I know you've got, a few different resources, YouTube channel, podcast. Where would you like my audience to go to find out more about you? Or is there one certain resource you'd like them to go check out?
You know what? I think right now, the thing that best kind of, if I had to have anybody go anywhere, come visit us on our podcast, have a good laugh, have a good chuckle. I have a feeling that a lot of the topics that we cover, web designers can relate to just as much as graphic designers. You can reach out to us on there. We've got, so it's, theangrydesigner.com. But at the same time, we've also got our Instagram that you can come and actually get some of our little bits of advice as opposed to listening to our podcast as well. And that's, we're the Angry Designer Podcast on Instagram. So I think let's keep those two. I think are the easiest place to find us for sure. I think, and get a good laugh or two.
Awesome. Yeah. And of course, we'll have those linked in the show notes. I'm excited to check it out a little more myself. All right. So final question when it comes to, I guess really what I'd like to know from you is, if you could go back when you were earlier in the game, let's say like 20 years,
Yes.
Hold on. Let's bring it back to 2000. So, we're Limp Bizkit's in the CD player, and you're ready to tell your early self, younger Massimo is just slammed, doesn't know what to do. What would you tell yourself 20 years ago to give you some advice with just balancing all this, and particularly when it comes to just managing a lot of projects?
You know what? we grow a lot, obviously, and you can, get good at virtually anything. But the reality is, in the end, it always comes back to trying to do what you love. So if I had to give myself any advice, for 20 years ago, it would be focus on the parts of the business you love most. Because if you do something you love every day, it's never going to feel like work. You're not going to work a day in your life. And early on, I took on everything thinking I had to, be everything, where the reality is I only had to be good at a couple few things to make me happy and to create a successful business. Mm-hmm. So if I had to, focus down on the parts that make you happy, because those are the parts that you'll spend naturally the most amount of time in. You'll want to dedicate more time to, and you'll enjoy doing so. And you know what? It's such an awesome world right now, with the internet. You can become famous, doing virtually anything. So focus on those parts is the advice I would give.
That's great. I love that. And I was even thinking with any business, even if you love it, there's still stuff that you just don't want to do, that you just got to push through. I mean, I get to do what I absolutely love now. Yeah. But there's still things that I don't feel like doing this. I got to just do it.
It's so
but
true.
It does make it better. It's like it gives you a little more jump to just get it done instead of, dreading doing something, because if you just get something done, then you can focus on the majority of what you really want to do. So I love that, man. Well, Massimo, thanks for coming on, dude. Really
Josh,
enjoyed this talk,
man.
Thanks
absolutely.
for
it's been an honor.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your time and your expertise. And I don't think this will be the last time, man.
I hope not. I hope you hear back, and I'm going to go check out your. I'm going to check out your design club, your web design club. I want to get on there and get some advice, because, man, I could use help from experts too, or even from outside opinion.
Yeah, it's awesome. Hit me up. I'd love to invite you in, man.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Cheers,
brother.
man. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, take care, Joe.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.